So let's welcome Anna and Raz on stage. Hey, the co-founders of Just Mad.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone, or ahoy. That's how I've been told people say hello around here. Really excited to be here. Thank you so much, Product Board, for having us. It's honestly my first time in Prague, and I'm having a blast. These last few days have been fantastic. Amazing country, amazing city, great food, great beer, everything great so far, and really glad to be here and exchange ideas with other product people, designers, people working in tech. I think it's a great opportunity. So the Slido thing here on my left, if you have questions throughout the conversation, just feel free to scan the QR code, put your questions in there, and then at the end we can address them. Let's get over with introductions real quick. This is Raz. I am a UX and product designer. I've been basically moving rectangles in Figma and Sketch for the last 9 years. I've been consulting organizations literally all over the world on this challenge of bridging whatever business goals they have with whatever needs their audience has. I've been doing that through various capacities by facilitating workshops, helping them with customer research, creating concepts, validating them. Yeah, I'll just hand it over to Anna next.
I'm half of the Just Mad conspiracy. So Hi, everyone. I'm a product strategist. So I've been working with digital products for the past 8 years and a half, almost 9 now. I've been a product manager before joining forces with Raz and creating Just Mad. I've been working across the whole product lifecycle from pre to post product market fit to scaling and growth. And I'm super excited about the NSM framework because it's a super interesting topic for us and for the product space.
All right, just a few words about what we do. The two of us are kind of the core of this little thing called Just Mad. We're a small consultancy, and when I say small, we're currently 8 people. We're full remote. Basically what we do, we kind of work at this intersection of user experience design, innovation, and strategy in the digital space. We help organizations figure out where to spend their money, if you're to really boil it down to the basics. And we help them set growth strategies, facilitate design sprints, create rapid prototypes, help them make the best bets, and in the end, become really successful in their area. And we've had the immense pleasure of working with quite a lot of great companies. We have more than 130 successful projects to date. You can see some of their names here. Probably you use some of these products
Top
or have at least.
corner.
Yeah, please notice top left corner, go product board, yay! Awesome. And yeah, we're just overall super passionate about design and strategy. We don't do development, and that's just a decision of ours. We just want to focus on our thing and do the best as we can in that space. And enough about us. Let's just talk about the North Star metric because we've seen some great results with the clients that we've applied it to. It's becoming increasingly popular from what we're seeing, and hopefully you're going to leave this session with some insight on how to make it work for your context. We set 3 big goals here for the session. First and foremost, we want you to kind of discuss about the challenges that most product and design teams face when it comes to product strategy and growth. We want to talk to you about the North Star metric as a framework and how they can help you overcome those challenges, and actually give you a glimpse of our North Star metric workshop. That is an asset that you can use if you're a Miro user. You can just spin up the template next time you're in the office with your team and apply the North Star metric activity and try to figure that out using our template. And then lastly, we've seen the NSM as a great conversation starter for all things product strategy and product-led growth. And hopefully we can spark some of that conversations and answer your questions at the end. All right. We really work with a lot of teams throughout the years, and we've been running Just Mad for 5 years now. And everyone is kind of building these amazing products. They have a value proposition, they have identified an ideal customer profile, kind of citing to what Stephen was showing before. They have their kind of ideas figured out, but they still have challenges. And I just wanted to compile some of the things that we've noticed in terms of patterns of what people say and what people struggle with. We hear people often saying that they cannot connect the day-to-day work that they do to the overall business impact. They feel they're kind of siloed in that way. They just get a bunch of things to do, but they cannot really understand the day-to-day things that they do. How does that translate into real value? Then OKRs is kind of a big thing. Everyone's using them apparently, and despite having that framework in place, they still feel like they're ending up working in silos, right? They don't feel like there's an interconnected kind of story of what they should do and what are the goals that they should go towards. Their team success is measured in a number of features they release. Stephen also mentioned that, this difference between focusing on output rather than outcome. And most of the time, the work is reactive, and ideas just are born out of this gut feeling. And instinct is great. You should definitely kind of take these wild bets, but it's also important to really balance out the insights that you gather from the user and kind of making it all work together to come up with things that are really, really meaningful. And teams a lot of times just focus on acquisition. For them, growth equals acquisition, but there's this concept of the leaking bucket effect. If you have a bucket with 3 holes at the bottom, no matter how much water you put at the top, it's always going to end up empty. So yeah, 8 holes, yeah. So the struggle is real from that perspective, and we hear these challenges quite often. And it really won't cut it to kind of work in that way, because there's really hundreds, thousands of products and services kind of competing for our attention and our money. And focusing on customer value is the most critical component that can actually lead you to growth. And now, honestly, now more than ever, if you cannot just coordinate everything and every effort that your product team is working on for maximizing this customer value, that's really going to be quite tricky. So people like me, like Anna, like Steven, like you all here, whether you're working in a startup, in a large organization, a business, whatever type of company, your job is to come up with ideas, fix things as you go, generate solutions. But with so many things kind of floating around at the same time, you really have to understand, what should you focus on? What are the few things that your efforts should be geared towards?
Slowly easing into the North Star metric framework. We don't have Steve Jobs here, but we do have an interesting book called Sapiens. And one key idea from the book is that people transact through stories. So when it comes to bringing people together on a common ground, there's nothing more powerful than a story. But of course, what happens in a bigger ecosystem or a complex company, what happens, everyone lives in their own story. So the question is that, how do we combine all of our stories for them to make sense, to find meaning, and how do we all fit together in that story? Because when you have a cohesive story, people are able to make decisions a lot more faster, quicker as they work together. So one way to find out if you have a cohesive story, just go around the company and ask different people from different departments, how does your product grow? Or how does the business grow? And usually what happens, we have different answers. So different in the meaning that everyone has a different perspective, or they give incomplete answers of how the product grows, or they just refer to the revenue side of the product. Usually what happens as a result, people have different mental models, and when people have different mental models about their growth, usually they refer to apples and oranges instead of just using a common language. They set different goals, and they lack prioritization. So a lot of misalignment on what really has to be done. And then part of our job is to help these companies to define a cohesive story. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce the North Star metric framework, your product team's unified story. So let's look at a quick definition here. So the North Star metric is the single metric that best captures the core value that our product delivers to customers. This is Sean Ellis. He's the author of Hacking Growth, and he was among the first people coining the term North Star metric. So in essence, the North Star metric is the key measurement of success for product teams in a company. And we call this the leading indicator of future success. And if you Google the North Star metric, you're going to find a lot of literature on the internet, so a lot of debate around it. So we're going to take a stab at it and see how we see the North Star metric and how our clients use it and how they actually drive product strategy with it. Also, we're going to cover a lot in the presentation, like leading versus lagging. So bear with us. We're going to explain what that means. So we can all agree that revenue plays a crucial role in tracking a business success. And sometimes it's really hard for individuals to connect their individual work or their input with revenue. So sometimes it's quite hard to say, oh, if I work on this, my outcome will be X. Revenue is crucial to track, but it's not the best indicator of future success because it's something that we call lagging. So it's a result of other actions that happened in the past. So then what would be a great leading indicator of future success? It's something what we call the NSM metric, the North Star metric. This is a great leading indicator because it bridges the business outcomes and the customer value in a way that every person or every team in the company works in synergy. So we have everyone pointing in the same direction. Think about this as this critical juncture between the business outcomes, which usually tends to be a revenue metric, and then the work that teams work on, which focuses on customer value. We like to think that it's like the GPS for your product's success. Now let's see what the NSM is not. This is not your product roadmap. This is not a software development process. This is definitely not a prioritization framework, but it does give you a very solid foundation. And this is not a goal-setting framework again. Like OKRs, we're going to cover that a bit at the end of the presentation. Sorry, I'm hearing myself. It does give you a great foundation to set better goals. So in terms of benefits, why you should use the North Star metric framework, it offers a decentralized ways of working and making decisions. It gets you a shared understanding of how the product grows, open communication between different teams and among team members. It represents a great foundation for setting OKRs, and it enables teams to connect their everyday work with business outcomes. So what makes a good North Star metric? There are a couple of attributes that we look at when we set a North Star metric with our clients. It has to be aligned with product vision, it has to measure customer value, and it is a leading indicator of revenue. Also, huge thanks to Amplitude. They wrote a book on the North Star metric framework, so definitely check that out. A lot of our work was inspired from that, so check that out. Now, let's look at a couple of examples and see what exactly we are talking about. So if you look at Spotify, a hypothetical North Star for them could be time spent by subscriber consuming content. And now looking back at the elements that we have here to define an NSM, so it aligns with product vision, it measures customers' value, and it is a leading indicator of revenue because the more you consume, the more you tend to use the product and stay a customer.
And it's outlined it like time spent by subscribers, not by the people who use it for free.
Foodpanda, this food delivery app, probably you're quite familiar with the concept. One NSM, hypothetical NSM, is weekly meals delivered on time. So it aligns with the product vision. It measures customer value because we're also focusing on delivered on time, not only orders. And it is a leading indicator of revenue. Netflix, number of subscribers streaming more than 30 hours per month. Another amazing product, Miro, number of boards created and shared by paying users. And probably at this point you are thinking, okay, so all these products, they're great. We have this North Star metric, but we work on complex products and we have a lot of components, a lot of features. How can one single metric can account for all of that work? Of course, there are multiple dimensions of a product that will determine its health and growth, and each should be measured by your key metrics. At a minimum, definitely you have to look at the breadth of the retention, depth of engagement, and monetization. Now, looking back at the definition, the North Star metric is a single metric that best captures the core value that your product delivers to customer. The question is, how do that North Star accounts for other dimensions in the business? So what we're going to do now, we're going to look at a constellation of metrics. So not only NSM, we're going to decide, okay, what drives that up? So we said that revenue is a lagging indicator, that's a result. And then we have the North Star, which is a leading indicator, and then the work that we do in order to impact that. So a very simple example how to put this. So output metrics represent results and input metrics represent actions. Very, very basic example. If I want to become fit, I don't want to become fit. So if I want to become fit, I have to take a good look at the nutrition, exercise regularly. I have to pay attention to the reps and the sleep that I get. So all the actions that will drive the result of becoming fit. This is the way that you have to treat your NSM as well. So how we're going to do that? We're going to break down the North Star into more actionable input metrics. So we're going to have a couple of dimensions that we're going to look at. So breadth, this is the number of users that are returning and that they're taking particular actions. The depth, This is the depth of engagement, frequency, how often they engage with your product, and efficiency. How well or how fast do they succeed? Let's see how this translates into an example. So we have Spotify. The NSM was time spent by subscribers consuming content. And we have listeners, content engagement, and listening frequency. So in terms of listeners, some inputs could be number of trial users, number of premium subscribers. For content engagement could be number of minutes per session, number of songs shared per user per month. And in terms of listening frequency could be number of sessions per user per week. We have prepared a full example, and we're going to walk you through exactly how we set the North Star for one of our clients. Of course, we had to remove the name, and we're just going to use some dummy data for that. So just to keep in mind, the elements of a North Star, so it has to be aligned with product vision, it has to measure customer value, and it has to be a leading indicator of revenue, of money.
All right, so let me tell you a little bit about Acme Inc., which is this organization that we did the whole NSM for. They were basically, we're using this format of 4 target audience who insert goal, need, desire here. XYZ company is describe the value proposition of the product and what it's meant to do. And unlike competitors, we do a better job at this thing. So in action, this looks like this. So for working professional aged 25 to 45 who want to be financially efficient, Acme Company is a one-stop discovery platform for personal finance products that enables them to find the right financial product for their needs. And this includes like loans, credit cards, any other type of financial instrument, and allows them to compare and find the right one anytime, anywhere, and receive exclusive added benefits for doing so. So essentially, if someone decided to subscribe for a credit card for whatever DBS bank, for example, they would receive some sort of benefits, whether it's a pair of AirPods, whether it's a $50 a preloaded amount on their credit card. And unlike other platforms for financial service providers, banks, and insurers, the product helps users build a portfolio of meaningful personal finance products and accumulate benefits over time. So this was the product vision for that particular Acme Inc. And they had a core value statement that was targeted to 2 different audiences. Of course, it was the end user, me trying to get a credit card, for example. And the value statement was that we want to help users find the right financial product and get rewarded for it. And on the provider side, for the bank, we want to help financial providers get their products to the right users. And there are 3 big supporting elements that helped us define this North Star metric. One of them is what we call a critical event. What is that one thing that if it doesn't happen, the value is not unlocked? So in this case, it was a successful application because people cannot just get a loan just by applying on a website and boom, there's your money, go buy a house. You need to apply and then kind of get vetted to receive that. The second thing that we looked at was the frequency. How kind of looking at the data that I already had, how many times does someone actually go and apply for a financial product, whether it's a credit card or a loan? And we kind of found that kind of 2 times per year. That was what they were currently hitting. And then what was the monetization model? They would get a commission for each successful transaction.
Now, let's look at the North Star metric. One thing before we jump into NSM. So if you wonder yourself, so what about the frequency? This is arbitrary, just for us to get a better understanding what's the organic frequency. But of course, this can vary on audiences. So for example, for credit cards versus travel insurances, this could be different. So one potential and one candidate and North Star metric would be number of customers that successfully apply and get rewarded for at least 2 financial products per year. It aligns with the product strategy, measures customer value, and it is a leading indicator of revenue. So coming back to the NSM formula, looking at the breadth, depth, frequency, and efficiency inputs, let's see how this looks like for our company. In terms of breadth, we have number of visitors that apply, number of returning users that apply. In terms of depth, so number of products per user and single user reward value. This was super important for customers. Frequency, number of successful applications per user in a year. And in terms of efficiency, number of successful applications and successful reward redemption rate. So now that we have these inputs, what do we do with them? Because the NSM framework, just on her own, it's not actionable. So what we do with these inputs, we take them and we map input metrics on the customer journey. And we create something that we call a metric map. And this way, every team member from the company can visualize exactly also the user journey, but also the valuable input metrics that you have to track. Of course, we have a template that we want to show you. And I'm going to let Raz to walk you through Miro.
Just a second. Right. So this is the template that we mentioned. You can actually just use this at your own organization, carve out some time and go through this workshop. There are actually instructions. This little owl of ours, you can delete it after you're done. We literally just give you instructions like where to add what information as preparation for this workshop. Again, huge props to Amplitude for the North Star Metric playbook for kind of inspiring us to create this ready to go template. Just going to skip over the first intro part to kind of highlight some of the important aspects of this. So kind of explain the North Star metric really briefly here so that whenever you're doing this as a facilitator in your organization, you have some visual support to kind of back up your logic and your reasoning for doing the North Star metric, and you kind of have everything you need in here. Before getting started, we really want to take the pulse in the team, and we ask people to answer these following questions. And this workshop typically takes about 2 to 3 hours, depending on how many people you bring into the team. We typically recommend anywhere between 7 to 10 participants, not counting the facilitator. But you can add more within a decent amount. So like 40 people is kind of dangerous. I wouldn't recommend. So like try to go to about like 15 maybe, but that's kind of the top limit. And we kind of ask people like, what prevents you from moving forward with your product service? What are the roadblocks they're currently struggling with? And then we ask them to kind of take these things and kind of put them on a slider and say, I clearly understand what our product strategy is. And then they just move them around and say, I strongly agree, I strongly disagree. And these kind of diamonds are see-through. So if they overlap, they're going to kind of pop out where the focus area is. So they're purposely made like that. I can easily connect the work that I'm doing to the business impact, and me and my team members are perfectly aligned on what we need to do. This is kind of a very easy way of kind of assessing the scenario. And then in preparation, this is actually mentioned at the description, you should add some pre-work here, like your product experience map, just a very simple visual depiction of the different user types and what experiences they go through, because you're going to need this. If you use OKRs, make sure to add the most updated version of them here. Your high-level roadmap, this can be even a link or any type of screenshot, and any details about your audience, whether you have like personas that are very well defined. So with all of that, that's all the pre-work that you need to do. And then we actually go through the steps of defining the product vision as a team. There's tons of examples in this template that you can look at. And then people have independent work areas. So what you're trying to do with this workshop is to see how aligned or misaligned people are on your product vision. And in the end, you're going to end up with one final version that everyone has voted on. We then look at the core value statement, defining your critical event. There's examples throughout the entire workshop. Then we're going to talk about how you monetize and how you generate revenue, and then actually start thinking about what a candidate North Star metric is for your organization. And I guarantee you're not going to get it in the first go. It rarely happens, but you really have to go through this process to kind of flex those creative muscles and get people to collaborate on deciding what works best. And of course, there are examples here to kind of guide your process. And the Spotify example is here. We have another one for OpenTable or a grocery shopping app. All of these examples are here to kind of guide your decision-making process. And in the end, what you do, what you're trying to achieve is kind of work your way back from the mid and long-term impact to the North Star metric, and then define all of those input metrics on the 4 dimensions: the breadth, the depth, frequency, and efficiency. Perfect. And that is the template, and we will be sending this out to everyone that kind of signed up for the event. So you're going to have a link to this. It's publicly available if you love Miro and use it. If you go to Miroverse, you can actually find it by searching North Star Metric, and you're going to see it there. It says North Star Metric by Just Matt. Feel free to use it, and let us know what you think. All right, let's go back to the presentation.
After running so many workshops, of course, we get a lot of questions about the framework. So we summarized the top questions that we get. So what's the difference between OKRs and NSM? Do they replace each other? How do they combine? So they do not replace each other. Actually, in fact, NSM and OKRs, they are a match made in heaven. And why do we say that? Because the NSM is a model for defining how your product grows, and the OKRs is a goal-setting framework. And what happens here, the North Star metric is a shared model, so provide context. It provides a lot of context, and that informs OKRs. So we use the NSM to get a shared hypothesis around what really matters for the business and the customer, and then we use OKRs for alignment and focus efforts, for collective commitment and learning and reflection. To visualize it more simple, so the NSM informs your opportunities and your leverage points, and then those, in fact, will inform OKRs, which will inform the work that you will be doing. And then you get the feedback, you close the loop, and you go back. How many North Star metrics should we have if we are working on a more complex product? We usually recommend to have one North Star per core job to be done. So for example, if your product is like LinkedIn, like a platform with multiple products underneath the same umbrella, then definitely recommend one NSM for each product. How many NSMs should we have if we have multiple teams? Of course, there are a couple of thresholds that your users have to cross, and sometimes we might have acquisition teams, activation teams, engagement teams, or monetization teams. And then, of course, if there's one core offering, so there's one job to be done, again, one North Star metric. This doesn't mean that each individual team will have different inputs, so we're going to cover that. What about multi-sided platforms? Again, here we usually set 2 North Star metrics for each audience. So this is for a real estate platform that we work with. We have the agents posting homes for sale. The North Star was number of paid listings that have 4 leads per week. And we had the NSM for the customer side, number of people looking, the number of visitors that contact an agent. Another question, so we don't have any data. Can we apply the NSM framework? Absolutely. Even if you don't have data, this is a great opportunity for you to understand what really matters, and you can start setting your dashboards according to the inputs that you define with your team. What if we already know what features to work on? That's perfectly fine. So the NSM will just give you more context on and alignment on your team, your team thinks differently about how the product grows. In terms of roadmap, you can compare your roadmap and see if the NSM framework really applies to that. In terms of metrics and the dashboards that you have set up, again, cross-check them and see if there's something that you're missing. How to get started with the North Star metric? We recommend to run an alignment workshop. We do this with our clients, and it's a bit more than what you just saw in that template. So make sure that you get a lot of people in the same room and start asking the question, how does your product grow? How do you feel about the strategy? How do you feel about communicating strategy? And a lot of questions. You can use a presentation to explain the value. And of course, you can run the NSM workshop by using our template. Okay, so after you do the North Star metric, the next question is, okay, so what happens after? Because just the framework on herself is not useful. So what we do, we have the NSM. So you define the level 1 and level 2 metrics, the inputs that we just mentioned. And then we do...
Just a second, I think it's important to kind of showcase the example and kind of walk you through how this works. So this is how we would take an NSM past the point of, oh, we did the workshop, we have the NSM, we have the input metrics.
This is a simplistic example.
Yeah, it's a very simple one. And then like let the money come in now that you have the NSM. It doesn't really work like that because, as Anna said, by itself, it only allows for alignment. So for example, for a grocery shopping app, right? You open an app, you add a few products, you want them delivered to your home. The mid and long-term impact they're looking to get is, of course, revenue generated through commissions by generating more sales. So the North Star metric for a grocery shopping app like this would be monthly active users placing more than 2 orders per month. And an important thing to note here is that your NSM is naturally evolving. You always have sort of a baseline. So you look at your current user base and you see that, okay, monthly active users are placing, let's say, 1.4 orders per month. And you really have to be a little bit optimistic and visionary about this. How can we go to the next step? But your baseline will always going to change. If you're doing a really good job at what you do, that might become monthly active users placing 4+ orders per month. Who knows? You diversify the type of products you have online. You start moving away from grocery shopping and you include pharmacies or any other types of products that people might be interested in. And then you kind of go to the level 1 metrics, which in this example is like the number of users placing their first order. Someone just installs the app. You really want to get them past that first finish line, right? How does my team help a new user get the first order in? That is critical. Then you look at a second example, the percentage of new users who place an order in the second month. Talking about retention, they placed it in June. You want them to place another order in July, another 2 orders in August, and so on and so forth. And then you also want to increase the number of items per order. Potentially, an idea would be like, oh, I saw you bought, I don't know, yogurt and granola. How about you add just some raspberries to go with that, right? So trying to increase the number of items per order, which kind of all of these 3 things combined will kind of increase the monthly active users placing 2+ orders per month and eventually impact that revenue. And then moving on to this level 2 metrics is kind of going very, very granular. How do you increase the number of new users placing their first orders? You have to increase the number of new users from your referral program. How do you increase that percentage of users who place a second order in the second month? The conversion rate for month 2 email campaigns should get better. Improve your email subject, improve the messaging, improve the graphics of that email, for example. And lastly, how do you increase the number of items per order? The percentage of users buying product bundles, right? Maybe bundle things up and see, oh, well, today if you buy, these 2 products, you get this other one for a discounted rate, for example.
Next up, we have the metric map that we mentioned. So once we have defined all the inputs that drive the NSM up, we place them on a map. So it could look something like this. Usually it reflects the full customer journey and the as-is customer journey, and we do place all the inputs and all the metrics that matter here. Next up, we try to define a growth model with our clients. This is something that we use to visualize growth easily. So we use a qualitative and quantitative growth model, and we start looking at growth to something that we call growth loops. Just an example of one growth loop could be new visitors people that learn about the app, new users, some visitors make their first order on the app, total users, the new users plus existing users. Some of them, they become inviters. Some of them will generate invitees, and then people become new visitors. So this is an incentivized viral loop example for the grocery shopping app that we just showed. And we also have more in-depth example here. So we generate these Excel spreadsheets where we actually have all the growth loops connected together and the acquisition channels. And then, of course, we look at each product area individually, and we have these qualitative scorecards. We do want to make sure that each product team or the product area and each solution has a certain description, and every team member understands how their work connect with the bigger picture. And then next step is setting objectives and priorities. Of course, once you understand how the growth model works and how each initiative connects, you can take each team, set objective, set the KRs, and then just do work. And for some cases where there is a lot of opportunity for improvement and optimization, we use something what we call an experimentation toolkit. So we look at different stages from the product, and we generate a mass of experiments. And we have here an example. Let's say that we want to improve the problem that we're trying to solve this is an example for Miro, hypothetical example for Miro. The problem could be low number of guests that convert into board creators. A hypothesis could be board guests forget about Miro as a whiteboarding options because we have no way to remind them that it is there after the session is done. We look at evidence, we look at prediction, and again, we look at all the metrics that we already have available in order to make sure that we run experiments and we improve certain metrics that we want. I think that was it.
Thank you so much. That was the presentation. Now we'll take questions because we see there are some of them there. Let us actually put them up on the big screen. All right. Oh, there's more. Oh, wow.
So let's start with the first one. So where
How much time do we have for Q&A? Oh, all
Oh,
right.
okay, perfect.
Indefinitely. All right, cool. Let's go.
where would you recommend to start in terms of evangelizing workshops in teams? Well, start with the problem that you're trying to solve.
Just to clarify, this is like workshops in general, or just the NSM workshop that would help to kind of refine that answer? All right, cool.
Maybe until we get more context. So in what context would the NSM not make sense? Um, I think probably looking at the product, different product stages, if you don't have something validated, so if you don't have the product out in the market yet, and you don't have your first customers, and you're still just trying to figure out the mental model they're trying to do with your product works or doesn't work. So I think the NSM makes a lot more sense when you do have a product out there and you have some data.
I mean, despite that, there is a scenario where it's still helpful to probably do first of the exercises in the template that we provided. Like, what is the core value? What is the critical event that we want our users to complete? What is the potential monetization approach? So it can still help bits and pieces, even if you don't have a product out there. Might help with alignment.
Have you seen a case when a badly defined NSM went south for a product organization? There are some cases when you focus on acquisition metrics more than value metrics. um, if you don't get the frequency right, so just to give you a basic example, Airbnb, if you think about retention and you expect people to use it monthly or weekly, that data won't pan out. So be very careful when you set your NSM to look at the frequency, and then also clearly identify the critical event that you have for your customers. So what's that single event that they do in order to unlock value? That's the most important part.
Another example is for actually the product, the Acme Inc. that we showed. So initially, they kind of tried to define the NSM by themselves, and then their NSM was the amount of rewards we would provide to people. But that was not complete. It was not in line with their product vision. It would, of course, mean more money for them. Yeah, everyone loves that. But it's too much geared towards revenue growth and not that much towards user value. It didn't completely comprise the user value. It was just half of the value people were creating because they were supposed to apply for a financial product and get it. But it didn't include that in the NSM. So that would be one example that comes to mind.
Okay, so what are the common challenges with product discovery your clients have, and what do you recommend to them to overcome these? So, product discovery in the sense,
Trying to figure out what to build next, trying to understand what users want. Some of the biggest problem we've seen, they don't talk to users. They just rely on the gut feeling. They say, oh, our competitors are doing that, we should do that as well. So kind of trying to play this me too role. So for product discovery, we honestly use jobs to be done. It's kind of the go-to framework. We create the job map. We identify the unmet sections of the users we survey a lot, and then we try to derive some of the opportunities from there. So jobs to be done for us is we're diehard fans of that.
which stakeholders, example, VP of products, CEO, PM, are must have to be part of this NSM workshop? So first of all, you should decide for what part of the product or what part of your ecosystem you're going to set the North Star metric for, and then make sure that you do get the most important stakeholders in the room, especially those roles.
Yeah.
What are the most common pitfalls when creating the NSM? Tons of challenges here. So first of all, getting buy-in. Then even if you set the right NSM, just operationalizing it and translate that into actionable items within a company when, let's say, the company is a feature factory and they have to switch to a different mindset, that's a complete different story.
And I would say not identifying the second level. People typically identify the first one pretty good, but then they don't finish up with the second level metrics, which is quite problematic because those are the things you can actually work on in your day-to-day.
Okay, every time we try to evaluate the NSM for a B2B product used seasonally, we come to churn rate. Is that okay? And if not, what do we do wrong? First of all, I would have to see the product and understand what the NSM is. But with infrequent products, it's okay to have churn. Dating apps or platforms or marketplaces could be a potential example of infrequent products. So it's okay to have some churn, but make sure that you use the right NSM to track the customer value and the business outcomes.
I mean, the natural frequency, like for the app that helps you do your tax. I mean, in the US, this is more valuable, but to do taxes, you mostly do like once a year. So like it's normal to just have a 1 year frequency of usage. But even if you think about Airbnb, like it depends on what type of user segment you're in. If you're a business type of in the user segment of business users that probably travel for work, they're probably in a different city every 2 weeks or so. So they're naturally gonna be using Airbnb more. But if you're just a regular person working a 9 to 5 job living in one city, you probably travel 3-4 times a year. So it's important not to kind of bucket people in the same kind of put people in the same buckets, because this natural frequency should be on your radar when you set these things.
This is an interesting question. So, would you recommend a product delivery outsourcing agency to use the NSM if they consider their service as a product? If yes, how is that different? This is a model for managing products, but if we extrapolate that to a business or which offers services such as we do, we also refer to our services as products because they have a specific time frame, and we also do that. I guess. How do we measure our success? Number of successful services.
It really depends on the type of service, so the job to be done. As we said, like there's one North Star metric for each job to be done. If, for example, we do a design sprint for a company, the way we measure the success of that is if the company actually takes the learnings from that design sprint and makes the right decisions. That's why we always follow up when we do a workshop or we do our work with the company. If we decide, if they figure out that the design sprint was validated and their concept is great, we would follow up regularly and see, hey, how is that project going? But sometimes it's not it's out of our control. If they decide to just stop the project for whatever reason, we don't have control over that. So it might be a little bit tricky in this scenario.
So we have here an analogy that we use in our training. So if you have a hammer, you have the feeling that everything is a nail. So don't do that. Take the NSM as a model for figuring out how your product grows. If you want to take it further and explore how you can apply it at the business level, that's also interesting. Actually, we're planning to that too.
Yeah. So for like an outsourcing agency or any type of agency, if one client brings you, kind of refers you to a different client, that's a pretty good metric, because they were happy with the work that you did and they're happy to unpromptly tell someone else, hey, you should work with Just Mad, they're pretty great, right? Just as an example. So that, of course, is like means it's in line with your vision. You want to help businesses do great. It's an indicator of revenue, because if the client was happy and they refer you to someone else, that means you have a chance of getting more business. And yeah, I think that would be an example. People refer you to other potential clients.
Other questions from the room?
If not, we can still sit around the office, chat, grab a beer. We're still going to be around. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone.